While many dentists get out of dental school and jump right into work, others end up years into a practice and feel like they're chained to their chair or spinning their wheels. At Duckett Ladd, we've discovered that there are 6 phases of long-term practice success. On this podcast, we'll explore each phase of success and help you on your growth journey.
Hey everybody, Jared Duckett, Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Welcoming you guys back to the Dental Momentum Podcast, powered by Duckett Ladd CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett, back at you with my business partner, Bill Ladd. And Bill, how you doing, man? It looks nice and sunny behind you. How are you doing today?
Man, we've come out of tax season and actually able to enjoy some weather, and it's good to be back, man. We kind of took a little bit of a hiatus during tax season. I hate doing that, but
yeah, we need to get away from those hiatuses, right?
Well, for sure.
But no, we got a really awesome topic today, and it's really cool because, we talk about the power of the niche all the time, especially what we do as a CPA firm, and we've gone laser focused and deep into the dental industry. And today we're going to talk about another business sector, if you will, that has gone laser focused and deep on the dental industry, and just excited to talk about how that's, benefited him and just getting laser focused on how how knowing the ins and outs and how it all works. So comments, Bill, before we jump in here?
I think this is something that pretty much every dentist we talk to, we have discussions around this topic, and, we'll get into it in a second, but, in regard to their building and potential constructions, remodels, and to be honest, it's something that we've never really, put much thought to about how important it is to, just like a CPA, just like an attorney, to have that specialist who understands the business of dentistry and the psychology and all that flows into it. It's really important. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting topic, and one that probably people could learn a lot from, just because most of us don't know much about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So just here with us today, guys, our guest, this is Steve Anderson. He's with us with Denco Dental Construction, also an author, got a couple books. We'll talk about his newest one today. But first off, Steve, appreciate you jumping on here, man.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Jared and Bill.
Yeah, so like we said, getting laser focused. We mentioned you're a general contractor with Denco Dental Construction. Just unpack that a little bit. What's your story? How did you get so laser focused? We'll kind of take it from there.
Well, it's interesting. I've seen dentists go through the same pain point that I went through back in '97. And I was driving to work one day and going, I am tired of being everything to everyone. And I have no value. All I was is a number. And I'm going, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And I'm going, okay, so who needs help? And instantly, dentists came to mind. I hate to say it, but I thought back of all the dentist offices I had done to that point, and they all had pain points, areas that they were lacking, areas that they didn't know what to do next, and so on. And so before I got to work, and it's a 20-minute drive, I came up with Denco Dental Construction. Denco stands for dental construction, really difficult. And then my business plan, and very well thought out. And then my next task was calling up and turning down all my residential and turning down other projects.
Yeah. So just talk a little bit about that. Like, why dentists? You said that it came to mind, they need help, but like, why specifically dentists?
Well, it's over the years, before that and at that point and since then, it continually is reaffirmed that when dentists get into the process, they don't know what they don't know. And that's what the book does, is it deals with all these things, that the questions they don't know to ask. And so great points are, one, I see a dentist, we did a walkthrough, and at the very end, and it's a beautiful office, and we opened up the door and the guy goes, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, that's your mop sink." And he says, "God, that's expensive." He said, "Yeah, it was only about $750. And he just turned red. And he goes, "I wanted a cheap Home Depot $50 mop sink." And right then it clicked that there was a disconnect. And then another time I went into an office, and the doctor had a full set of drawings done, permit ready. He said, Steve, I want you to do this. Let's get going. I said, time out. Let's just talk. One thing I've learned over time is let's take a moment to make sure this matches your goal and your needs. He says, well, I'm sure it's fine. I said, just bear with me. So we walked through the office, and I could instantly tell there were some pain points. One is his operatories were too tight, and he didn't have enough room between the head of the chair and the head wall. And he had a sink right where he was going to put things in it. And he did this for 10 years. And he had a hallway behind it that was 6 feet wide. And I go, so don't you want to deal with this? And he goes, oh, I forgot about that. I've hated this for 10 years. I hired a specialist to help me lay this out, and it doesn't work. And I'm frustrated as heck. And then the guy I've hired, the associate, the reason I'm in a hurry, he's getting out of school and he's going to start with me in 3-4 months. And he's 100 pounds bigger than me. And I look like a dwarf. And I said, oh, okay. So what we did is we said, okay, let's address that, but also let's address that in those 5 other ops that you're adding, so we don't duplicate the problem, because basically all he was going to do is just duplicate it. And so we just stopped, redrew the plans, and it cost him about a month and about $5,000 at the time. But talk about a happy doctor. All of a sudden he had an operatory that fit, and it really worked well for his new associate.
Absolutely. So Steve, that sounds kind of like a process that almost worked backwards, where an architect was maybe trying to, fit what they wanted into a box that maybe didn't make sense for the dentist. And what I like what you did there is you kind of said, well, let's put a pause on this and let's actually talk, and let's do a little bit more of a discovery as to what do you want? Is that the proper process that most dentists should go through?
Yeah, that's that little part of the questions that dentists don't know to ask.
Yeah.
And so when you have a specialist, someone that like yourselves that specialize in doing dental CPA, there's a lot of stuff that people don't think about. Same thing in contracting, same thing in architecture. And you can spend the same amount for an architect to do a great job or a terrible job and a terrible floor plan. And the construction costs will be the same.
Yeah.
But which would you rather have? And what we really do is we've taken and found that when we get the first floor plan back, we take the time to ask those questions and just verify this is what you want. And it's interesting that over the last 10, 15 years, we're able to get to a point where the first pass is typically 90, 95% there. But once in a while we miss. But the most important question is once you have something done, is to walk through with them and understand how they operate. And it's asking those extra questions and making sure that it fits them. I refer it to drinking the Kool-Aid. There's a lot of gurus out there, and the gurus do a great job, but they put the dentist in their format, into their form. And great example, I had a dentist that we were at an expo, and we were literally going to start his project within a couple of weeks. And he signed up for going to out of state and to a big company, and they're going to help him finish up some final details. And I said, when you go away, you're not going to have this cabinet anymore. You fell in love with this 8X system. It ain't going to be there anymore. Oh yeah, it was. And I said, here's $100. And I kept the $100. He came back and he said, we spent the entire time talking about design, but we spent maybe 15 minutes about my operatory. And it's backwards. And so that's the Kool-Aid that gets drunk, is people go into the seminars, people go to the different areas and they drink the whole thing. And I learned early on in business that there's lots of great information out there, but typically the average person will only keep maybe 30 or 40% that apply to them. Because you look on our website and there's not one office that I've ever done that's exactly the same. Why is that? Every dentist is different.
Yeah. So walk through a little bit, you say drinking the Kool-Aid, and they kind of jump in and just go, and maybe too fast. Kind of just walk through, and the book does a great job of walking through it from start to finish. on steps to take to build your dental practice. Kind of just walk through a typical process. Like, let's say I'm a dentist and I'm like, hey, I'm looking to, start a practice, or just do a scratch start, and I'm going to build a practice. What's that process where they get with you and just, you kind of take them through that? Do you start from the very, very beginning with no architect plans or anything?
Yeah.
Or do they have to have that beforehand, or how's that work?
I've the rawer the person, the better. So what happens is I can't build them all. So that's why I wrote the book, and try to help people go through that process and really understand it with it. But ideally, what happens when we have a client that comes in and says, hey, I'm interested in doing a new office, and they have no location, they have nothing, is put them in touch with someone that's first specializes in dental brokerage. That's so huge. No different than yourselves, is someone that really understands the ins and outs, the extra requirements of utilities, the extra value that the dentists have that nobody talks about. And if you would, Jared, maybe let's remind me to come back to that.
Yeah.
And then go into the situation of saying, okay, so let's put you in touch with this broker. And at the same time, go talk to a lender that specializes in doing loans for dentists. I'm not talking about, you don't go down to your local corner bank. You go to someone that specializes in bank loans for dentists. And there's a big difference, because they understand the debt that you have if you have student debt, and they also understand the numbers and what works and what doesn't. And there's some that will qualify and some that won't. But what's really unique is you can still get 100% funding. And I tell them to do that first, is after we also talk about their program. Their program is basically, and it's defined in the book, of helping them identify how many square feet they need. Students, doctors, well, I worked in this office and it was this square footage, so that's what I need. And well, let's back up. How many ops, do you do consults? Is that important to you? And talk about your clientele. What's interesting, we live in Metro Phoenix here, and what's interesting is we have 23 municipalities, but I have one client we did 6 offices for around town, but each office looks different. Because if you're in one area that has a Hispanic high population, you need a bigger waiting room. They're great on Familia, and they bring more people with them. And then, or you're in an older area where basically, you could get by with 1-to-1 ratio for the dental chairs. So there's so many variables that go into that pot for the program. And that's where you begin. But even before you get that, the thing that I really stress, Bill and Jared, is to the dentist is a big question. The big question is, do you know who you are? And they go, why is that important? Well, I said, do you want to save thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars? If you're really on task for who you are and what's important to you as you go forward, that's going to help you save time in making decisions, and also keep you from buying things. I'm one of those that bought things that I don't need. I bought a spa one time, and it was sitting on a shelf, and it was a 12 by 12 box. I was embarrassed. But, we've all done those things. And that's what I really look and try to help dentists make those better choices.
I love that approach you take. And reading your book, you'll see that you can certainly tell you're passionate about the business of dentistry. And one thing we're big believers on, and I can tell you too, is a lot of it comes down to the mindset and really dialing in to, like you said, who are you? What do you believe? Why do you exist? All these things that are really important into building a business that a lot of times I think they're not, really top of mind with a lot of people. And I think we do see people get into some of those situations. They're what you call mistakes, so go ahead.
No, and capitalizing on that is it keeps you from buying a a certain piece of equipment that cost $110,000. And I walked into one office down south, and on the counter, he had 2 of these milling units, and going, you use those? They were collecting dust.
Yeah.
And why did he sell them to him? He didn't know how to say no.
Yeah.
And also the issue was he wasn't confident enough in himself to be able to say that or delegate to someone and help him be the bad person. So
Steve, let's kind of go through a common scenario we'd see, and I want to hear your take on this, because let's say you have a dentist that, you know, ends up buying a practice, and this would be a doctor to doctor transition, and as a result, they inherit a building, and let's just say that they own it at this point. They're part of the deal, and in short order, you know, they're young and aggressive, and they're wanting to expand, and they're finding that they're bursting at the seams, and it feels almost like they kind of hit this crossroads. And you talk a little bit about this in your book. How do you view that crossroads for these dentists? I mean, how do you think they should look at it? If they're to that point where the metrics that we're watching with them and just their guts telling them, I am bursting at the seams and something has to give.
Yeah. And that becomes the challenge. And that's where you want to have the right professionals. You know, you want to have your CPA on board with what you're doing and where you're headed. You want to make sure that you're talking with a contractor, and more importantly, a broker that really understands the marketplace, and be able to see if there's a transition out there, be able to see if there's an existing office that you can move into. You know, there's those situations where it's a dental office that you could literally move into a larger office. There's situations where when those aren't available, a bigger square footage. But what's interesting is you have that right broker, and if he specializes in dental, he understands all the options. And then so what he'll do is he'll come back to you and say, here's option A. It's an existing bare bones gray shell, meaning there's nothing in there. But the landlord's going to give you $80 a square foot for tenant improvements. Yeah. Here's a space over here that is a built out dental office. It's tired, needs some improvements. Your contractor says you're going to need $100,000 of improvements to put the lipstick on the pig and make it look good, you know, and something that becomes viable. But what's interesting is that landlord's also going to give you $100,000 towards tenant improvements. So all of a sudden, you're able to move into that for nothing. Or here's option C, and you have where it's something in which you have to demo what's there, but it's a better location, higher traffic, and it's going to cost you maybe $250,000 out of pocket, and then talk through the pros and cons to each option.
Yeah, so you're saying, I mean, it varies. You're going back to the numbers, the data.
That's exactly right.
Your options, yeah.
You know, and then you go to your CPA, and you know that's where you come to your team. It's about creating that dental team that really care about you, not your wallet. Yeah. You know, and we can tell who those are.
So if you're looking, do you see a lot of where you're working with a dentist or whatever that is, let's say they're doing a new construction? Do you see a lot? Let's say currently they're, I'm going to say a 5-op practice, you know, but they build on, or how do I say this right? They build out like 8 ops, but don't get them equipped and use those for future growth? Or how do you keep that? How do you kind of do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, let's start with the new doctor going out. And so my advice to the new doctors is 95% of the students graduating, maybe 98. I usually only see 1 in 100, what it amounts to, of dentists that really can go into business right when they're out of school.
Yeah.
And then the others are waiting 2-3 years to learn on someone else's nickel and get all the pros and the cons and everything. So as they're going out and they're looking, I tell them not to buy. And they'll go, well, wait a minute, you know, what's wrong with this? And I said, well, the problem is you tend to buy too small. And you also don't know who you are yet, because you know you're a dentist, you're passionate about it, you love what you're doing. But what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years is you're going to find out the pain points, the HR, the business side of things. Is it really you? Is this size office might be perfect, but you also might find that you'd be happier at an 8-op, or you might be happier on a little bit smaller practice. And it gives you some flexibility. So that's why I say, start out with a lease, and then you have options. And then the other thing that I've seen doctors that buy the building right out the go, and they might already have had another practice early on, but they go buy that first building and they buy it too small, and they grow it so fast, and they go, damn, I'm an isolated building. There's nothing around me, and I can't expand because the zoning won't allow it, and the site isn't big enough, or the people next to me are long-term tenants and they'll never move, and I can't expand either direction. And so it gets very expensive, or whatever it might be. But once in a while in rural America and throughout America, there's those options where there's a fantastic building that has more than enough square footage. We just found a building for a client that had 7,000 square feet and he needed 4.
Yeah.
He took the whole building. And does that happen every day? No, but that's where you have to take it's case by case. There's no solid, just this works for you every time.
Let's go back to that example of the young dentist, and let's say that they are, they do buy an existing practice, and let's say this is a doctor that's been doing it for years and years and years, and you've been in the rooms, and we have too, that probably haven't had their carpet changed since the 80s, and the arts from the 80s, and it's just very, very dated. For that person, let's say they don't own it yet, but they're learning who they are, like you said. How important is it to slap some lipstick on that pig and make it their own, make it who they are, more, at least more of who they are?
Oh gosh, Bill, that's such a good idea and good comment. Is people don't realize the value of your appearance for you, for your patients, and for your staff. And it's proven nationally the first year return of just putting lipstick on a pig, basically that's carpet paint and dressing it up, is a $10 a square foot return, and that's huge. And then what's really interesting, not $10 a square foot, it's a 10% increase in volume. But what's interesting is if you go into a new space and you're going from something where you're in a tired place and you're moving to a new place, the return is a national average of 34% for 2 years. Now do the math. Do the math of what happens for that kind of return. What else can you invest in to have that kind of return? And then what also is exciting, and people say, well, what is it that drives this? And well, it's excitement. All of a sudden, we've seen dentists that are ready to sell their practice, literally, and they move into a new space and they're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and they're reinvigorated. They just love coming to work again, and their team feels it and their patients feel it. And the other thing we've seen is there could be a great dentist that is in an existing office that they took over, and it's really sad. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, but they have these patients that love the dentist because of who they are, great relational people. And what's interesting, they move into the other office and all of a sudden they're getting all these referrals from them. They look at the patient and go, what changed? He says, your surroundings. I believe in you now. And now I'm not embarrassed. And now I'm going to tell my friends about you because you're the best thing I've ever had. But now your surroundings dictate and tell also who you are and support what you're doing.
Yeah, there's that ROI right there, right?
It's huge.
So talk about, you're talking about how putting lipstick on a pig appeals to the patients, maybe new patient generation, that stuff. How important also is it regarding the design of the, I'm going to say back office, like the flow, size of operatory, flow of work, that sort of thing?
It's really a big thing, and especially now as prices continue to increase for construction costs, but also costs for rent, costs for purchases, everything's gone up. And so, what, the East Coast or the big cities would feel, and that's where you'd see a lot of smaller offices with more operatories. We're going to continue to see more and more of that and using the space the most efficient way that we can. And that's really what you should be doing is creating a flow that fits you. And so I say that there's still some principles, and I talk about it in like 50, 60 pages in the book about flow and design. And there's some specific rules of things that work really well and why they work that way, such as you don't put a bathroom in the waiting room. Well, why is that? You know, there's nothing more embarrassing than you go in and do your business, open up the door, and everyone's looking at you and they're going, you know,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but you talk about patient experience.
Right.
You know, and that's what it's about. It's all those little innuendos, and it's fun talking about those things, especially to students, because they're going, wow, I never thought about that before. You know, and just these simple little rules and principles that really will help you excel and help you not only enjoy coming to work, but also your patients will enjoy the entire experience.
So Steve, if you think about a practice, again, I always like to kind of go back to examples here, but let's say that you are bursting at the seam, but you could stick a Band-Aid or two on, or you could get your broker and you could find another spot and you could relocate. What's been your experience as far as a dentist mentality or concern about leaving an established location and maybe moving even into a nicer facility, but either in a different part of town or, you know, in a different area? What's been your experience with that?
Well, the national recommendations, the telltale signs is you never cross a freeway, major boundaries. Yeah. You don't go more than, 3-4 miles. But there's exceptions to that. And it all comes down to what motivates and what really helps drive your business. Relationships. That's the bottom line. Yeah. If you have good relationships, you can throw a lot of that out the window. I say that, and I know that I've seen someone move 12 miles and cross 2 freeways. I had another one that moved 17 miles and crossed 2 freeways. The one lost one patient. She died, literally. And, and I said, how is that? And we started the office right before the downturn in the market in 2008. And they still did a 10% increase that year, even with the downturn in the economy. And what's interesting is, the thing that I've seen time and time again is it's find the best location you can. And sometimes it costs a little bit more. But one thing that you see, I'm sure, is how much money dentists spend in marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, I met with a doctor yesterday and I said, so how much are you spending in marketing and advertising? He says, $5,000 to $8,000 a month. And then they're quibbling over the rent. And instead, why aren't you finding the absolute best location you possibly can and do no advertising? I had a doctor exactly that situation down in Tucson where they literally moved 3 doors down in this complex. Now get this, is they went from a terrible floor plan, had some really bottlenecks, had some issues with the space design. And as we moved them, they were on the corner, so the traffic drove by them. What's interesting, he was spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month in advertising. And he moved over there and he hasn't been able to look back since. He's been averaging 40 to 60 new patients a month. And he says, dang, I should have got more spare footage.
Yeah.
So hit on that a little more. How important is that, I'm going to say retail frontage or signage, frontage by traffic count? How important is that as opposed to a dental practice that's kind of tucked away and you really can't see it from whatever road you're on?
Great question, Jared. What happens is we've seen time and time again is good locations work exceptionally well. And what's interesting is the whole market for orthodontists have changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And what is a great example is it used to be they didn't care where they were. They would be back in the corners, and for the most part. Now you see them right across from schools. You see them prominent spaces and locations because they're not getting the referrals that they used to get from the general dentistry.
Yeah.
And so as a whole, what we're seeing is location can mean everything. I think of one that we put right next to a grocery store. And my gosh, he did little things like put fresh cookies out. And it was interesting. He'd even have the little busboys, people that are picking up the carts and stuff. Can I have a cookie? And all of a sudden he and his family became patients and stuff like that. But you talk about signage, a big sign that looks really beautiful isn't necessarily important. What's interesting is dentistry, or dentist is. And I had one client that had the perfect location. You come off the side street and you look right at his face. But it had this beautiful sign, and it was really kind of hard to make out, and it had his name and all this. And so for the first 8 months, he's going, why aren't we getting the business? And so finally, one day he's going, it's got to be the sign. And he changed the sign and put dentist up. And instantly he had a 20 or 30% increase. Instantly. And he had patients walk in that had been going into that center for months and going, when did you get here? I didn't know that was great. It's so nice to finally have a dentist. And so sometimes we overthink things and make things too elaborate,
I think that's just it's great advice. And it's something that, again, it's them maybe not, or doing something that's not their skill set, or something that's outside their comfort zone, is trying to create something that really they don't have that professional help. So let me pivot here and kind of go back to the comment you made earlier. And I am going to, timestamp this. It's June of 2021. We've come out of COVID, and the word, and this is what we hear, and I'd love to hear your take, but is construction costs have been, high, and lumber costs are high, and everything that goes into it seems to be high, and real estate's really hot. How would you look at that as a contractor when a dentist is trying to make a decision? Do I do it? Do I just go ahead and bite the bullet? Do I wait? Do I remodel? I mean, how do you kind of look at the construction cost as a whole in an environment where it seems to be they're a little bit inflated?
I'd love to scream. I mean, my electrician, for example, cannot get quotes that'll last more than 24 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I get, when I look at costs that my piece of wood, I buy a sheet of plywood for $28 a year ago, it's 104, it's kind of like, and then what has that done to the overall cost? It's been about a 22 to 25% increase from last year to now. That's huge.
Yeah.
And the national average for doing a brand new dental office across the country is $140 to $165 a square foot. Well, you get up into, Seattle area, they're $300 a square foot. And what's interesting about that, they're still doing it. Why? Well, there's a little secret. It's called the value of the dentist. What other business do you know that can put $250,000, $500,000 into a new location, buy this new equipment, and their success rate is 99.5% in 10 years? You know what the failure rate of a general contractor in 5 years is?
No idea.
What we got?
The success rate is about 33%.
Wow.
That's not very good, and all the more reason to do your homework as you look for people. You know what the national average in 10 years for the most small businesses that fail? 80% failure. 80%. And we're talking dentists are less than 0.5% failure. So why are you as a dentist such a great asset? It's because they understand not necessarily business, but it's a commodity that needs to happen. And they're there. And so what you want to do, though, is it is a business now. It used to be you build it, they'll come. Now you need to surround yourself with professionals that really care about you and understand, and can help you with CPAs such as yourself to understand the numbers and bring it all together and be able to say, you're getting a little out of hand for this ratio here, and you need to get that back in line. And because it is a business and we want to improve your bottom line. I met with one morning, a great example is about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I met an office that had just won a national award for the biggest increase in a year for the company he was working with. Well, after I finally talked to him, he went from $500,000 to $1 million. And then as I talked to him, I walked into his office, I'm going, this is stressful. This is chaotic. He's wanting to add, he's trying to find a place for another person. And his overhead was 90%.
Wowzers.
Ow. I said, why are you in business? And then as I talked to him, I'm just feeling all this stress and frustration, but he got bought into the Kool-Aid that we talked about earlier, and didn't have a CPA to really help him understand what those percentages were. Then I went, it was the same day, I went and had lunch with a doctor that we finished a year prior. And he bought ADEC cabinetry, he brought ADEC equipment, he bought a brand new build out, and he put it in the most expensive location in town that was available for a strip center location for a lease space. And his overhead was 57%, and he did $750,000 the first year. Why's the difference? He surrounded himself with good quality people and professionals that helped him make good decisions, but also he understood about relationships. And so he and his wife on the off hours would go and drop off door knockers to neighbors, and they made mouth guards for the football team, and they did all these things, and instantly he was a success. And all of a sudden everybody knew his name. Little things, sometimes we work too hard. We just throw it on social media. Instead, the relationship makes such a big difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, here it is, guys. You guys listening, you can't see me holding up. This is Steve's book, Dental Ease, Your Dental Practice Mentor Guide. Steve, I'll just kind of end on one question here, and then I'll let viewers how to contact you. You reference, hey, this book is the guide. It's going to save you on mistakes, which is going to save you money, right? Talk through just a couple, maybe this is a big question, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you see dentists making when they're going through this process? Maybe it's a new build, maybe it's a remodel, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you see that by using this book as a guide can help them save money?
One is not getting talked into things that you don't need. It's not everybody needs to start with a CBCT, and not getting, if you're starting, don't start any more than 3 operatories, but be able to expand into the other rooms. And it's about keeping your overhead down. You're starting a new office and not get talked into all the extra flash. It's about the ROI. It's about getting started. And you can always add the wood wall. You can always add the fountain. You can always add certain features. And I tell clients, let's just put an accent wall in there. And, in a year or two, you can put all these extra things in but put in the things that really make a difference. Meaning, you want to make sure you have the good flow and design and the walls and things like that. And we've even gone to some offices where we've actually had a hallway and we put a door and we didn't build out the rest of the office because of money and budget, what have you. But pay attention to your budget. Lending is different than it was 10 years ago. It used to be you would have a 10% slush fund for overages. You don't have it anymore. Right now, anything over comes out of pocket, and most people don't have that extra money. Taking the time to find professionals that care about you will save you thousands and thousands of dollars. Having people that care about you makes such a difference. And I can go on and on, but the biggest areas that I see people waste money is by not also having the right floor plan that works for them. You know, I've walked in to see offices completed and they're way too wide and they could have had extra operatories, or they're way too small. You know, the not having a big enough waiting room. It's embarrassing to have a waiting room that won't hold your patients. It's and also it's proven if you don't have a place for them to sit, they might not come back. You know, and if they have to stand outside, and in Arizona, that's the last thing you want to do when it's going to be 116 this week. You know, it's you know, there's little things that we do subtly that will hurt us. And then probably the next biggest thing that I see hurt dentists as they move forward is handing the reins over to an architect, a designer, or whatever, carte blanche, because they get out of hand, but also it gets designed for them and not you.
Yeah.
I've walked literally into an office that was built 6 months previously, and the doctor was just sitting there with just head down and just really frustrated. And I said, "What's up, doc?" And sorry. And he said, "I have a hard time coming to work. It's overbuilt, and patients, I know, feel it. And I'm just frustrated. And I just let the architect and designer just go crazy on it." And it was, I mean, it had like 7 layered soffits. It had all the operatories had a big radius soffit. I mean, it was just way over the top. And that's what happens, is you end up with a flare that isn't you. And that flare, that connection is so vital to always build the top of who you are, not the top of who someone else is.
In a lot of those situations, you have the overhead to go right along with it as well. And that creates a whole nother sense of crushing burden on the doctor. You know, one thing I'd like to end on, Jared, I think this is enlightening to me. And Steve, I appreciate it, because I never thought of this way, but your building is such an important investment and asset that you're going to have in your career. One of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one. And the interplay between having a discussion with your builder, your architect, and your accountant, and just trying to run the tape and run the numbers and see not just what makes sense, you know, from a financial perspective, but also from a workflow efficiency. All these things can come together and create a practice that I think any doctor would love. It's just that doesn't seem to happen very much, and that's a really enlightening item for me to hear that and think that through.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we appreciate you, man. I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge specific. I mean, you know, the ins and outs of a dental practice building. It is, I mean, you're just full of information. Why don't you just real quick, just briefly tell the listeners how they can reach out, get a copy of your book, get in contact with you.
Yeah, it's Denco Dental Construction. The website for the book is dreamdentalpractice.net. dreamdentalpractice.net. And if you can't remember anything else, just type in Denco Dental Construction, and we have a link to that on our website also.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we'll put your contact info in the show notes. And again, appreciate it again. It's you guys out there, like we always say, double S, double R, you know, go out there and share this episode with somebody who, heck, is starting to, you know, build a dental practice, thinking about building a dental practice, remodel, you name it, share this with them, subscribe to the podcast so you get it directly to your phone, rate it, give us a good rating or give us a bad rating. Tell us where we need to know where to improve. And then leave a review for us, guys. We appreciate you listening. Steve, appreciate you. You're an awesome dude and just, you know, full of information. Bill, appreciate you, man. And as always, guys, we appreciate you out there. So we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.
Thank you.